Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists podcast with me, Gavin Cook.
And me, Jackson White.
And today we've got Ian Bishop on the show. Ian Bishop is the world's fastest puncher. So we're excited to have a little chat with Ian today about some of his world records that he holds and see what we can uncover about his martial arts background. So thanks for coming on the show today, Ian.
Oh, thanks for asking me. It's great.
That's all right.
Thank you.
No problem. Jackson, shall I fire over you?
Yeah, sure. So, Ian, just give us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, your education, and ultimately how you got into martial arts.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was born in Cardiff and moved from Cardiff to a place called Bay there when I was 5 years old, 1973. And I started boxing with my father when I was 5.
Okay.
Then I went to Common District ABC Amateur Boxing Club when I was 7. They took me early. And I boxed there for 5 years. I had my first, they called one in 1977, my first few bouts.
Okay.
And then I did a little bit of judo, but I didn't like judo. I couldn't get on with that. And then I went into it's when the VCRs came out in the video shops.
Oh, sure. I remember those days.
And I used to have to cycle down to, it was a couple of miles down the road, the local video shop. And that's what I found. Just they called out to me. I found Bruce Lee.
Yeah. Were you a Betamax or a VHS man? Is the question.
VHS. Betamax was supposed to be the one that was going to take off, wasn't it? But they never did.
What was that?
Yeah, I have his members of going into the video shop when I was a kid, and there used to be a whole wall of VHS videos, and all you could get for Betamax was like Rocky 1 and Jaws. That was about
it. Yeah. Yeah, so that was in a place called Tavern Green. So I used to go down there every week, and the first one I hired out was the Big Boss.
Yeah.
Right,
and
absolute classic.
Yeah. And I was 14 at the time. No, I was 13, sorry. I was 13 years old. And as soon as I watched it, that was it. It was just like, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm supposed to do. With boxing, my dad put me into it because my great-grandfather was a bare knuckle champion and used to box in the Navy.
Okay.
And my grandfather was a boxer, so I went into boxing because I was really quiet and shy, but also because my family did it, you know.
Yeah.
But I was talented at it. I'm pretty well, you know. I was pretty good at boxing, but my heart wasn't there. You know, when you're a kid, your dad takes you wherever. But when I saw Bruce Lee, it just lit a fire, and it's still going today. And then when I was 14, then I started Lao Kung Fu and the Frank Lynch.
Okay. It's amazing how many guests we get on the show that tell us very similar stories about the Bruce Lee getting Enter the Dragon out, or the Big Boss, or Fist of Fury, or something like that, and that was it. That was just the awakening for them into their martial arts journey.
Yeah, most definitely. It was like I was pretty fanatical, mine.
How did you find the transition then from regular boxing into Lao Kung Fu?
Well, it's entirely different. When I boxed, I was put into boxing, if you like, as sort of schooling off my dad to be able to look after myself and everything. But then Kung Fu was done off my own back, and the people in it were different. Boxing is, I think, one of the best forms of self-defense there is when it comes for real. But the Kung Fu I found was more, especially with the Bruce Lee and Laugar with Frank Lynch, who was one of the greats. It was probably about as close as you get to training with like a type of Bruce Lee type.
Yeah.
So he was really special as well.
So
so was my instructor. Yeah.
Sorry, and as I was going to say, just sort of elaborate a little bit on, you say the different type of people. When you say sort of the people are different, I mean, are you talking about the sort of raw kids off the street that tend to take up boxing, opposed to maybe more of a disciplined type that take up martial arts?
Oh, definitely. The ones that used to go to boxing. I mean, when I started boxing, I remember there used to be a bully in the school, and he was in there before I started. So I couldn't get away from him. And everybody in there, they were all tough, you know. They could all fight because it was different back then. If you went into boxing, you couldn't just train. You had to go in the ring. I mean, the first time we did full contact was in 1983 when I was 15. And I was in my element because of the boxing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As soon as they got the head guard on, and I was just the way to go. We didn't wear head guards when I boxed as a schoolboy, but then we had the full face one. Remember, the free fighting head guards. Yeah. And I was a way to go. I was in my element, and it suited me better than most of the people there who weren't used to using their hands in that sort of boxing mode, you know, which you need really in full contact, I would say.
No,
but the people, you could talk to them a little bit more, though. I think they were more multi-dimensional then in their personalities, I would say. The people that went into Kung Fu. Okay. I can't speak for karate and things like that. I did do a lot with a lot of the Kangi Shingai guys when I was a kid. But I think they were more multi-dimensional, interesting to talk to. I could have conversations with them because it was my passion, and I found it was their passion too. And you know, I had a lot of friendships then built up that way. Whereas in boxing, you didn't have so many friendships. You went there, trained, got in the ring, and went home. It was a bit different.
Did you ever get in the ring against the school bully?
Yes, loads of times.
And how did that one pan out then?
Not very good at the start. Because I had a problem with my nose. I had to have my nose done when I was 7 years old because of the boxing. Because it turned out you could only have to touch my nose and it would pour with blood. Right. And anyway, David Trott was his name. And he gave me a few in Bay that it was like in that ring. It was like there was sort of no rules. There was no holding back. But after about a year or so, it was the other way around. I was a bit bigger than David. We were the same age, but I got on top of him. We ended up actually having a bout together, which I won. But so he was shorter than me, and I got pretty good like at boxing. So I got my own back.
Yeah, that's good. It's always good to hear when you give some retribution to the bully. So
I couldn't beat his mouth though.
Oh, right, fair enough. Yeah, that's often the case, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how did you progress in Laugar then? So
I started in 1980. Sorry?
Yeah, so how did you progress and start moving up the bouts?
Well, I started in 1982. Then it was back then. It was 2 grades a year, and I was with Frank Lynch, like I said. But in 1985, I started. I was also in a Kung Fu free fight. Do you remember that was a sort of coming in with no pads back in the day? I don't know if you remember. Ron Van Cleef did a bit of it. It was out in Japan or somewhere, I think, and they used to fight all out with no pads. I don't know if you remember that. It was called Kung Fu Free Fight. So I joined the Kung Fu Free Fight Club in Barry, where I live, when I was 17, as well as the Laugar. And I was the first one and the only one to win a Welsh title of that, because it was only ever fought for once. Because the club disbanded. It was such a mental club that it disbanded. because the things we did there were just insane. I also trained I also trained with oh, where's it gone?
You okay? We can still hear you in.
Oh, still here? Oh, I went on my picture. I wonder what happened. I also went at the age of 15. I trained with people with like Alwyn Heath, Keith Phillips, Fido, who was a knockdown champion. David Jones. There was a lot of these knockdown champions. I used to train at a place called John Snelling's gym, which was at the Valleys, and I learned a lot from the Shingai guys. I was only 15 and they were in their late 20s. So I did a lot of training and sparring with them. And so I carried on with the low guard. I got up to my purple sash, which is 2 from black. And Frank Lynch, it was me and my instructor, Martin. The numbers were dwindling. It was the Welsh Kung Fu Association. It was 1980, end of 85, beginning of 86. And he came there. Frank used to come whenever he felt like. Martin was the main instructor, Martin Harding. And he came there once, and it was just, I remember it clearly. It was in a place called Abercunnan Leisure Centre. And Frank turned up. And it was just me and my instructor, Martin, training. And then he just pulled the plug on the Welsh Kung Fu Association there and then. So then we had to start with the British Kung Fu Association and Jeremy Yao. I could keep my grade, but I would have to, all the forms, the sets, as they call them in Logar, walking techniques, etc., that I've been doing for the last 3.5 years, had changed. So I could keep my grade, but I had to do all the gradings again, if you like. I had to progress right through. So I basically had to learn all the walking techniques, all the forms, all the sets again. And by this time, I'd got a bit. The British Logar Association that we trained with, compared to what it used to be like with Frank, was absolute rubbish. You know, calling a spade. It was just not the same.
Yeah.
Didn't do any sparring. We didn't do hardly any stretching. We didn't do any high kicks anymore. If they did sparring, it would be like 2 minutes at the end of the lesson. Yeah. Whereas when it was with Frank, we'd basically do the warm up, which was intense. Then we would do I don't know, 30 minutes or so. The lessons were 2 hours long. 30 minutes on techniques and your forms, walking techniques, kicks, etc. And then we just fight for an hour. Yeah. That was what it was like back then.
That sounds sounds like the sort of classes that we used to do back in the 80s as well. And to be honest, you know, it was always a lot of sparring. You know, we used to do our patterns and we used to have forms, but you know, it's, at the end of the day, you know, if you're a sparring club, that's what you want to do, isn't it? You want to get stuck in and you want to spar and you want to fight.
I want to be like Bruce Lee.
Of course.
I didn't want to be like one of these, you know, I think probably to do with my boxing. I was more hands-on and used to fighting, if you like, sparring. So that was the only part of Logar I didn't like about Kung Fu. I'm not a forms person, the sets. I didn't really get into the sets. And I wasn't particularly good at them. I was into the kicking, the punching, and the sparring, basically, and the training, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Lots of different... and I think that's one of the key things with martial arts. There's so many facets to it. You know, there's a little bit of something for everybody, isn't there? You know, so certainly myself and Gavin, when we were growing up, you know, the form stroke patterns, it wasn't something that really endeared to us, but we had to go through it, you know, to get the grade. So we did it, but actually we were there just to compete. You know, get on the mat and spar. There was nothing better than 10 minutes into a session, a 2-hour session, when our instructor said, "Right, get your gear on." That was exactly. There's no patterns tonight. Off we go. That's what we loved.
And I used to do it at the end, or always they'd grab someone, 14, and I used to grab the older guys. I was really aggressive, and I used to say, "Do you want to do an extra couple of minutes of sparring?" While they were packing everything away. So I would do that every lesson, and So I was training.
I've certainly not been a massive fan of patterns through my life. However, over this last 6 months, patterns and form have been a lifesaver. They've basically kept the clubs going because we can't do anything else. You know what I mean?
Well, that's it. And as you go along, obviously, that was back then. I've developed my own concept, transporter street MMA, which is based on all my experience of boxing and Loga, plus training with them. I train a lot with the Thai boxers, kickboxing, karate guys. And I used to teach a lot of the Loga guys sparring. They used to come to Barry, and we used to have sparring classes that I used to do there.
Okay, so tell us about your system then, Ian. So I suppose you've effectively just tried to do a little bit about similar to what Bruce Lee did, I suppose, back in those days. Is take elements, take elements that stuff you've studied and try to put it into your own system.
Yes, exactly right. It's not just about. I didn't go out of my way to do it. This is the thing. Well, I didn't like the British Kung Fu Association, and I started questioning techniques that we were doing, and the instructor there said, "Oh, we don't do that." So straight away, I thought, well, that don't sound right to me. So I just started doing my own thing. And it just sort of formed. I started coaching a guy who wanted to learn how to box. He's a clever guy, older than me, and I could bat off him a lot with different ideas. And I love philosophy and Bruce Lee's philosophy and Bruce Lee's input. And that's using his philosophy, his body mechanics, and everything. It's just sort of all come together. So the techniques that I do, even though I don't like forms and sets, I have drills which have to be done. I've got about 12 different drills. So if you like, I think forms were started out that way in martial arts to begin with. They were an effective way to train a certain technique, if you like.
That's right. Well, they were just like I suppose, modern day video players, weren't they? The forms were used to capture the techniques because, we didn't have photographs way back in the day, and they didn't have video cameras. So the forms katas were used to capture the techniques.
Yeah.
And to practice the
repetition. I think it's just got a bit. That's right, exactly. And I just think it's become more of the people that do the forms and certain things. You got people like Jean Frenet, who was famous at the kata, wouldn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's become more of a not doing something for a fighting technique, but just more for an artistic impression.
That's right.
So the difference is with my techniques, my drills, they are done for a fighting technique, which have to be drilled to be able to do it, if you like. Whereas the katas, I think, now and forms are done for more of not all of them, I'm not saying all of them, but I think they're done for a more visual effect rather than the people actually knowing what they're doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly evolved, hasn't it, and changed over the years. I mean,
yes.
Imagine saying to the the Koreans and the Japanese, back in the sort of in the 100 last century, tell them to do a pattern or kata to music, they'd just laugh at you, wouldn't they?
Yeah. Yeah. But saying that, music, I do everything to music. Because the way it's formed, I say my concept, transporter street MMA, I called it that because when Bruce Lee, as you know, called his concept, because he doesn't believe in styles, which I don't, or restrictions and boundaries, he called it Jeet Kune Do, but then everybody started questioning Jeet Kune Do as taking it as another style, and that's all up in the air now with different people.
Yeah.
Whereas it was Bruce Lee's personal idea of actual fighting. It was his own thing. So I called mine Transporter Street MMA. Take it away from a name. Transporter just means a bus, a boat. Train any vehicle you like. You just get into your vehicle, whatever starting point you want to get in, take you to where you want to go, and you get out. That's Transporter. Street, it's not a sport, although I've trained lots of that type of person, boxers, the cage people, they like to be called. Certain people, I've trained them, but when it comes down to me training, my concept, it's purely for street defense. It's also, I rely heavily on Bruce Lee with his philosophy. A fanatical study of Bruce Lee for nearly 40 years. And so I've been training for 47 years. And so it's an amalgamation of everything that I've done. And I've thrown out probably 80% of everything I've learned and just got the core that's being constantly developed all the time. I mean, I know I'm 52, but my technique is sharper and I'm faster now than when I was 22.
Okay.
I mean, I did my last world record of my 23 punches in a second. I did when I was 50.
Brilliant. Okay, so we'll get on. We'll go on to your world records shortly, but I'm going to chuck a curveball in for you now, Ian. So
right.
you know, talk to me about how you feel as the dynamics of the 1 and the 3 inch power punch, because I used to be fascinated as a kid over the Bruce Lee 1 inch punch, and I used to practice at a secondary school. I used to get my fellow pupils to hold books against their chest while I tried to textbooks against their chest while I tried to knock them over with the 1 inch power punch. And
do you know what? That's funny. It's funny. Sorry, go on.
No, it's gone. Over to you.
No, I was going to say that's funny you should say that, because I used to get all my mates. They used to be the ones who used to train with me at home when I was in my teens. When I grew up, I used to make him hold the cushions and hit them as hard as I could in the stomach and things, see how far I could hit them and things like that. Not particularly the 1 inch punch, just used to try and hit him with the hardest power punch that I had. But I can do the 1 inch punch. Yeah, I started getting into. I don't do it so much now, but I started getting into that a couple of years ago, doing that, the 1 inch punch, and I did it. I did it first on one of my students, Andrew, who was 6'6" and 23 stone, so he's a big guy. And I used to hold the focus mitt on his. Well, it'd be just above his stomach. He was so much taller than me, and but I used to knock him flying, and he was 23 stone. But so I got it pretty good. It's all a combination of the. What people don't realize is you start with the 1 inch punch with your hands on the target, with your arm slightly bent, and then you can drop depending on which hand you got on the body. You have the same foot forward. So if I use my left hand actually, and left foot forward. So if your hand is on the body and your arm is bent, excuse me, then you can drop the hip back on your left side so that till your arm extends straight. Yeah. See? You with me? Yeah. And then what you do is then you just explode the hip forward, keeping the fingers on the target, bending the arm, and then releasing it just at the right point. And it just doesn't matter if they're big, doesn't matter what they weight, it just sends them.
Yeah, I mean, I was again, like I say, I was fascinated because I think I'm not sure what birthday it was, but I remember my mum, my dad brought me Bruce Lee's fighting method, the 4 books. There was 4 books.
Yeah.
There was the yellow, blue, red. Right. I can't forget which.
And the green.
The green, yeah. Green. And I remember reading them. And I think the first volume was about his training, about the sort of things he used to do.
Yeah, basic technique, advanced techniques, or basic technique.
That's it.
Basic training.
That's it. Something like that. Yeah. And he used to run pattern. But I always remember there was like he talked a lot about his chi that he used, wasn't it? And the way he used to sort of, you know, before he used to like the 1 inch power punch, for instance, he used to sort of imagine that there was like water flowing through his body and it was like exploding like a hose pipe in the fist.
You've got to focus it, definitely.
Yeah. But
most definitely. But he was so the things that he said. I mean, it ripped a lot of the martial arts apart. If you like, I think Bruce Lee would have been a fantastic boxer because he cut through a lot of the BS that's surrounding. With one or two people that you get in martial arts. So I think he would have been a great boxer because, I mean, everyone knows for real he was a tremendous fighter. He had a lot of fights, didn't he, in closed doors, Bruce Lee. Yeah. But his philosophical approach and open-mindedness to like you said, use what's useful, and reject what's useless and add what's essentially your own. And that's basically what I've done. So my Transporter Street MA, it runs parallel, if you like, to Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. Not following him, because that would be wrong, I think, because I think Bruce Lee would have preferred it this way. If you run parallel, then I was sort of mirroring his ideals, but I'm not following for the sake of following, like you get a lot of people doing Jeet Kune Do now, doing, I would feel, and turning it into a style. So it really goes against the grain of everything that he held close, I think. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, his like I say, his idea was to create something unique that actually worked, wasn't it? You know, at the end of the day, and for people then to take that and turn it into various different styles is probably, like, as you said, going against the grain of what he probably would have wished for. You know, if he was,
you get a lot of them saying
live
that's right.
Today, yeah.
They were a lot of you hear it all the time, don't you? What do? I do Jeet Kune Do, but you can't really say that. What you should say, I suppose, is that you're doing my interpretation of Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do. That's what you should say, really, I think, because it's a concept, not a form, not a style.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, definitely.
And a lot of these things also, I find, I've been doing it a long time, and you realize it takes, you think you know something, but then when you study it and break it down for decades, you understand at the start, very little you understood, really. And it takes a long time, I think, to get the philosophies and things like that behind everything. It just sort of happens at different points, I think. It's like the old Plato.
It's a lifelong journey for people, though, isn't it? Because as you go back in history and you read, like I say, you read about the martial arts and you follow it through into the life that we lead today. The life that we lead today is still constantly evolving. So look back in 10 years' time, and what might have worked now might not work in 10 years' time. You know.
Well, that's it. Yeah, exactly. And what the technique you want, which is what's helped me, is you see for certain, like if you're a sprinter, I used to sprint, and your technique and everything becomes shoddier as you go along. As you get older, you struggle more and more because it's a very dynamic thing. But then the technique with my martial art, I watched my technique from just 2 years ago, and my technique has improved so much more. So you know when something like that happens, you're going in the right direction because it's constantly improving, not deteriorating, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So you know that what you want to be doing, even though I'm getting older and my stamina is going to dwindle. It does. But your technique can still improve.
Yeah.
Which I never thought possible, to be honest.
Okay. So Ian, then talk to us about your world records. They're all dying to hear about. Like I say, so you've got 8 world records. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what was the first one then?
Well, how it started was I was training. I was teaching a Kangashinkai class, even though I'm a Lexlow guy, and I was teaching 2 people called Lee Bennett and Spencer Bennett, both British and European knockdown champions.
Okay.
And I started teaching their class for the British Championships for the fights. And my hand speed, doing the techniques that I'm doing, was coming on and on and on really quickly. So one day we just decided, let's see how many I can do, And we had one of the boys holding a stopwatch, and my son actually holding the pads, and that's when we did the first one, which was 13 punches we managed to get to in 1 second. Now, I did that after 2.5 hours of training and teaching. We did it right at the end. I was always better when I was really hot. And it took me a further, 30, 40 minutes to be able to get it down to 13 to that 1 second, which when I look back now, I can canter that now. But the technique at that time allowed me to do 13 in a second, which wasn't official. We just put it on the internet and said it was the fastest but the funny thing is, right, if you Joe Scembry, Jackson, if you know Joseph, he's world taekwondo champion.
We've been trained together since we were kids, yeah.
Well, there we are. Well, Joe used to train with me for a long time, And Joe said to me, he said, Ian, he said, before you started doing these fast punches on the, time, nobody on YouTube was doing it. And now they're everywhere.
Right.
And so we did the first one anyway. It was unofficial. And then it wasn't until I was claimed to be the fastest, which I knew I was, because to understand it, you'd have to know the technique. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
The way I punch. Traditional punching can't keep up with the way it's done. It's just impossible to do, even the Wing Chun punch. So up until I think it's 3 years ago, then I had to hand it over to Dean Gould, who examined the footage in slow motion, the time, and I got that first record ratified. And then we went from the 13. I went to Alfie Lewis's competition in rugby, his World WMO World Championships.
Okay, yeah.
And I managed 17 punches there in a second. Very difficult to do because holding the pads is almost as difficult to do as the punches. So the people that trained with me weren't available. So I had to get Joe Bloggs to hold the pads. And I tell you, to do the technique takes a certain technique on the focus, which was difficult. So I managed 17. Then I went to the British, the Martial Arts Illustrated Awards the next year, and I did 19 with Stan Diamond Prescott holding the pads.
Okay.
World Thai boxer.
Yeah.
From London. And then I went to the Clash of the Titans and I did 20. That was the same year. We thought we'd contact Guinness again then at the beginning of 2017. So we sent them emails that I was doing excuse me, I was doing a cancer charity for a little girl who had a brain tumor, and I asked Guinness to come along because I was interested in going for multiple records on one day, but they didn't even get back to us on email. So I did, that was a sponsored punch, and I did 22,500 recorded punches in 5 hours, which was on the bag, a heavy bag for the little girl. And then anyway, so we get to the 2018 then, and with Dean Gould on board then, I could send everything that I did to him. So I did, let's say 20 of the Clash of Titans, everything had to be sent to Dean. Then I did, in Barry, I did 23 in, I think it's 1.1 seconds. Then I went to Norwich, Chris Hemstock Taekwondo as well. Okay. Up in Norfolk.
Okay.
Do you know Chris?
No.
Well, he's a Taekwondo guy as well. And I was there doing a seminar and world record attempt, which was for 30 seconds. And same thing again, I didn't have my guys with me, and Chris did the best he could do at holding the pads. The speed of the punching is difficult. You got to move the focus mitts with the person. It's very hard to do. So I managed 280 punches in 30 seconds, which was the first 30-second record. So it was a record anyway. That's still, that's good. Still going some. I think I works out about 9 punches a second.
Okay.
And then we, I wasn't happy with that. So I did it again then with my people back home. Obviously, it has to be video recorded, it has to be timed. And I did 308 in 30 seconds, which I'm still not happy with. So I've been training secretly to beat that, because unofficially we have, but we got to do it officially. So, and then I did the 23 seconds that year as well. And then they've all been verified and gone over. And so I was really happy when they said, I was so nervous, about saying, but I knew I was, but some people's perceptions are different. So anyway, I got it all done, got all the videos done. Everybody, it's all been confirmed and everything now, and I was really ecstatic, to say the least.
So how do you train for something like that, Ian? What is the, because, is it, is there like some sort of stamina training involved, or is the weight training involved? Is the, I'd be interested to know how you sort of train for that sort of
thing. Man, I tell you, really, this training is exceptionally hard. I used to train for what I did for years and years to build up the speed and endurance in my arms and my shoulders. I used to train with 2 sets of ankle weights on my wrists and duct tape them together.
Right.
As you do,
Two sets on each arm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Ankle weights, not the wrist weights, because they weren't heavy enough.
Yeah.
So, and what happens is, the old thing, when you've got a weight on, then you take it off, you feel faster for about 5 minutes till it reverts back. But when you do 5,000 to 7,000 punches every day, going through all the drills, and my drills are not straightforward, they're all different. So I've got 12 of them. They're my forms, my katas, if you like. And when you do those punches every day, year in, year out, and then the speed stays and the stamina. So that's the way I got the hand speed up. I was quick anyway. My mother was a good sprinter, and my dad was he's a good squash player. My father, county standard squash player. So he had the endurance. My mum had the speed and passed it on to me. But I just, with the as regards to getting faster, ankle weights on the wrists. That's the only way to go. And then you've got to have the determination then to do it, because after 5 minutes you can't say, this is too hard. This is not much fun, because that's what a lot of people would do, because I didn't enjoy a lot of it, but I was so fanatical about being the quickest, the absolute quickest. That,
it sounds like you still are that fanatical martial artist because, like you say, to go from 13 all the way up to 23, and then
that's what does,
in the second, and then one, obviously, I'm guessing, we'll keep our eyes peeled over the next couple of years for you getting the Guinness World Records for the 1 minute punches. It's going to happen.
Man, I tell you, when I did the 30-second one up in Norwich, there was there was a grandma, Libertino Parisi, do you know him, from Italy? Italian guy. No. Well, he's a good motivator and talker, and I had to work so much harder because I didn't have my pad guy with me, and although Chris did a great job, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. 30 seconds. There was all these people there as well with expectations. Remember, I'd just done a seminar as well, so I was already a bit tired. But
there's nothing like a bit of pressure though to keep you keep you sharp, eh?
Yeah. There wasn't just one person doing the video recording. There was about 20.
Yeah. So one of the things that we always want to know about our guests, Ian. So, what over the years has kept you motivated?
I don't know. I mean, it's an old cliche, isn't it, to say it's a calling. As soon as I saw Bruce Lee, and my feelings of Bruce Lee have only deepened, not like some people say, I was inspired to start because of Bruce Lee, but it goes much deeper than that with me. And my whole concept is developed around his ideals, interpreted through my own thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm motivated at the moment to beat my 30-second record.
Yeah.
And then once I've done that, I will not do another one then. Last 2 times I did 30. The last time I did 2 30-second records, I really, the last attempt that I had, I dropped to my knees and I couldn't get up. Because it's that, so this is why I won't go for the minute. One, because the punching is slower, and it's like a gunfighter. I want to be known as the absolute fastest, not an 800-meter runner. Yeah. It's the 100 meters I'm interested in.
Yeah,
the fastest.
Yeah, the glory, the glory, the one that everyone wants, the 100 meters.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's nice. It's nice to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they were setting me up actually. I was gonna. In October, I was supposed to be, at my age, going fighting for a world title. It was all lined up as well up in London, but that fell through because of COVID.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
I was talked into it.
What style was you going to be fighting on that end? Is it your own style, or are you going to be reverting back to like a Laogar type system?
Yeah, well, it was continuous, so I can't revert back because I've come so far, and I've drilled. Like I said, I drill everything to music because everybody fights to a different rhythm. So I train. All the punches have to be hit to time, and kicks, everything done to a rhythm, and the rhythm. Then we train for like 2 hours. Constantly to music, and everything that we do hits a different beat because everybody fights to a different rhythm. So if you can train your technique to any rhythm and just adjust it within a second, then once you can fight your rhythm, you can break a rhythm. But you can't use broken rhythm, which is impossible to read unless you can understand a rhythm and fight in a rhythm and train in a rhythm. You might fight broken rhythm if you're inexperienced and it just happens. But as you go further on, that'll only take you so far. So we always train the music. And,
is that what you do, Jackson? When I can hear "Pump Up the Jam" playing in the background, is that what you're doing?
No, it's not. I'm just dancing, probably.
I used to run to that one because I went back to boxing senior. Remember? I went back to boxing because I got so fed up with the British Kung Fu Association. I went back and tried my luck at boxing senior, and I was a light heavyweight, and I was in the Welsh ABAs in 1990. Was it 92? Either 91 or 92, and I was like one of the top light heavyweights in Wales. But I got to the semi-finals, and I was disqualified for pushing the guy.
Right.
He said.
Okay.
And the guy had but the guy that I fought had a professional contract lined up, and it was a close fight. So I was 24, but the same thing. My heart wasn't in it. I did it, I think, purely to see if I still could.
Yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with that, though. I think we all have a bit of that in us, to be honest, don't we? I think if you've been involved in the martial arts through your younger years, I know certainly, it sounds like all of us, sort of in the, like you say, you were 5 when you started boxing. Jackson, you were 4. I was 8. We've been involved in the martial arts all that time. I think, and then when you start getting a bit older, there's always that. Even now, there's always that. If I was to train and go in a competition, wonder where I'll get to, and I think we all have a bit of that in us, don't we, as we get older?
Yeah, it's the desire, and I think that only, giving you guys credit is, I think that's a rare thing, because the people that actually, stick to martial arts as a lifelong thing are very few and far between, aren't they? I know we all come together, but there's not many that actually do it, and it becomes part of. You can't take it away from you. It's who you are, I think, inside.
It is, exactly. I mean, I had a break when I joined the forces, although for 16 years I dabbled in and out, every 6 months and doing a little bit of this. I picked up a bit of boxing and playing rugby. But as soon as I left the forces, I jumped straight back into martial arts, and that was it. It's as if I've never been away.
Yeah,
it's
just
something
who you
that's
are.
just you are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is.
And some people, and a lot of people, my dad used to say I was a fanatic, but he didn't mean it as a compliment.
Right. Yeah, but you've got to think. I mean, if you've got that type of personality, where it sounds to me you're very much like an all or nothing type person, and if you've got that type of personality, if you hadn't have found martial arts, you'd think of the other paths that you could have taken. And that's the thing. Isn't it?
I wish that I'd had the passion for boxing, because I just really wish I'd had that, because of the money and the titles and things like that involved. But I mean, it wasn't meant to be. My passion is, I suppose, it's about. It all sounds. I know a lot of people say these things, but it's about creating yourself, isn't it? And you realise as you go further on down the line, it's not so much about the titles. You have the desire and things there to do these things. But I think it's about developing yourself. The further it goes on, I said to my student the other day, my senior student, that it's 20% technique and it's 80% philosophical as you get further on. I said to him, you've got to, being physical is going to die away. So something else has got to take its place, and as you become more focused on the ideals and the philosophical side of things, I think.
Yeah, and I know some people that's something as the longer you're involved in a martial art, that's something you learn more and more, isn't it? Because like you say, the physical element does fade away, and that's, you can't change that.
No,
that's just life. Right. Your body does dwindle, and you're not as explosive, and you're not as fit, and you're not as powerful.
I get into weight training.
Speak for yourself, Jackson. Speak for yourself.
I'm getting into weight training. I tell you, I'm really getting into weight training, as well as part of my training. I've always done weight training, but never seriously. But the last year I have, and it's really strengthened me. Added another. I thought my body'd gone. Yeah,
if the muscles are strong around the skeleton, it'll hold it a lot harder. Yeah. I keep telling Gavin he needs to get down the gym more and do some weights. He just goes and does the aerobics classes.
Yeah. Don't knock it.
With the women there, with the ladies there. Yeah, I can't blame that.
Of course not. I wouldn't do such a thing here.
Okay, we're gonna have to wrap it up there, I think.
Okay.
But before we go, something we always ask our guests.
Yeah.
Really, the last question: what advice would you give to a younger self, given everything that you've been through in your life and the journey that you've travelled on? What advice would you give to an 18, 19-year-old you?
Me, what I planned to do, which I didn't do when I was 19, when I could do all the vertical side kicks and all the things like that, because my legs were almost as fast as my hands. I have hip problems now, but that's what I was known for, was my kicking. Right, and I was going to go to Hong Kong. That's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to
get into the movies.
A stunt guy. That's what I planned on doing from the age of 18 onwards. I went to the British Nationals and I beat Lloyd Allen. Remember Lloyd?
Yeah.
I was only 17 or 18 when I did that, and that's what I wanted to do. But then, unfortunately, I met a girl, and it all went out the window. That sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, so one of our good friends, Mikey Lambert, did. I don't know if you know Mike Lambert.
Not sure.
He did exactly the same thing. He did achieve so much from an early age in Taekwondo, and then he said, "You know what? I'm going to Hong Kong." Jumped on a plane and off he went.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
Yeah, huge stunt coordinator now. Yeah, he's worked on some fantastic movies, and that's was his ambition. He achieved that, and now he's doing it for a living, traveling the world, coordinating films and martial arts stunts.
Yeah, great. Well, that's the advice I would give to myself, because I have the ability to do it. I proved that with my world record, so I still, I got one more world record to do, 30 second, when I'm going to beat 308. I'm going to get to. My target is around 3:35, and I think my 1 second record's out of reach of anyone forever, unless they do my technique. And put in perspective, Manny Pacquiao did 6 punches in a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Bruce Lee did an unofficial 13. Just in case you wondered.
How many?
But I always say
13.
13 unofficially.
Okay.
What I always say about Bruce Lee is, if he was alive and he knew the technique that I used to punch, I always say he would beat me. He would have beaten me.
Yeah.
He was such a phenomenon.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, thank you very much, Ian. It's been great to speak to you today. It's been good chatting about Bruce Lee as well.
Thanks for asking me.
No, thanks for coming on. It's like I say, it's always good. We always have a timing issue getting people on. There's so many people we want to get on the show, so hopefully we'll be going for another 20 years.
Yeah, I'm doing one actually on the 20th with and Cynthia Rothrock's going to be on there. There's a group of us. Vincent Lin, who did the Jackie Chan films.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've been invited to go on there as a part of a panel to talk about Bruce Lee.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I have to tune into that. You have to send us the link here, and we'll stick it on our Facebook group.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's great. And thanks for asking me. I wonder sometimes. I think sometimes, you know, I prattle on a bit. I talk too much, perhaps.
Yeah, we all do.
We all do, but that's what people like. They like to hear those stories, and they like to hear from the real you, because a lot of people will know you from the world records, but perhaps won't have sat down with you and had that 30-minute conversation. So this is probably the next best thing we can give them.
One thing I'll just say before I go is the world record, we did it for fun. It was just a fun thing, and it has no bearing on my martial art. It's just a product of it, of the technique being so refined and the hands being sharp. So that was just to showcase my art, but then everybody sort of detracted from my art and was on about the hand speed. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, that's always the case, isn't it? One thing always leads to another, which you least expect.
That's right.
Yeah, they just flow on, and that's the best way to go sometimes. Just see where things take you.
Okay,
Ian.
I just get fed up of talking about it sometimes.
Well, I'm
Not
sure
today,
our listeners won't get fed up of hearing it. So thank you very much for taking the time again, and hopefully we'll get you back on once you get that next record.
Yeah,
I'll be doing it next year.
Okay, perfect.
For sure. Before I get too old.
Right. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks very much.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode of the Motivated Martial Artist podcast. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page and our Facebook group, the Motivated Martial Artist podcast.
And don't forget also the Motivated Martial Artist Instagram page.
So head along for some extra content, interviews and much more.
So until next week, it's bye from Jackson
and Gavin,
the Motivated Martial Artists.